I want to take us through just a brief history of domain names, kind of where they started, how they, kind of came to be, and, again, getting to where we are now. So, to me, I believe it all starts with your name, right? It's your domain name. The first domain was registered in March 15th, 1985, which was symbolics.com. Symbolics was a computer manufacturer in Massachusetts, and today the site, actually if you go to the site, it is a site that is a museum of the internet and a museum of just factoids about being online. It's a pretty interesting space, but the first .org was registered in July of 1985, and the first .net was also registered in 1985. The first .org was MITRE.org. It's still run by that company, MITRE. MITRE is actually based in Washington, D.C. I have several friends that work for MITRE. And then the first .net was Nordu.net, so all in 1985. And at that time, domain names were free. So you could acquire a domain name for no cost. The people that were taking in the paperwork for domain names would help you figure out if you needed a com, or if you needed a net, or if you needed an org. Com stood for commercial, so if you were a more commercial company, you got a com. If you were more of a network or connector, you got a .net, and if you were anything else, you got a .org. And that's kind of how it was. But in 1995, domain names were no longer free. They started to be $100 for the first 2 years, and you had to buy 2 years at a time. So all of a sudden, you have cost associated, and it's not a cheap cost. It was not a bottom of the barrel, and let's see, how low we can go. People realize that to get online, you want to have, this is your brand online. 1998, we started to have privatization of the DNS, and also the dawn of ICANN. ICANN is the policy body that helps to set a lot of the policies for how the domain name system is run from country to country and around the world. There are 3 conferences a year for ICANN. There was one that just happened this past week in Helsinki. They generally put them in different places around the world to be able to access different customer bases, different thought process, different governments about how the domain name system should work. From there, 2000, one of the things that ICANN wanted to be able to do was to help promote competition and to be able to give consumers choice. Whether we think that they did that well at the beginning or not, that has always been one of the goals of the domain name system, is to not only have one, but to really be able to promote choice and to give consumers options to be able to brand themselves online. So in 2000, you started to have new domain names that were approved to be able to be launched. .biz was one of those, .info was one of those, .mobi just a few short years later, .name was one of those. So you started to have a little bit more competition and a little bit more choice. It was not just com, net, and org anymore. In 2007, one of the largest domain name sales happened. You had vacationrentals.com, which was bought by Bill Sharples for $35 million. And it was a way, he said he wanted to be able to block some of the competition that he was seeing from Expedia. So he paid $35 million in 2007. Another famous sale was sex.com in 2010 for $13 million. I actually didn't know about vacationrentals.com, and when I found this fact, I had to go search out several different sites to make sure that it was correct. So either all of those sites are wrong, or this really did sell for $35 million. So, I think it shows the power of a name and really what we can do with having that name online. In 2013, Who API, which is a company that does a lot of spinning and a lot of data mining of the internet, put out a statement that the internet had run out of 4-letter .coms. So not necessarily 4-character, there are still some 4-character left, but 4-letter .coms were gone by 2013. 3-letter .coms were gone in the 90s. I believe it was 1998. So people were looking for more choice. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not available on the secondary market and your customers could go buy them for a higher price. But having a first-time registered 4-letter .com, no more. Also in 2013, we had done a study in the US with small businesses. So .co did a study, and one of the findings was that 57% of small business owners said that it was harder to find a good domain name for their company. It was easier to name their baby. I found that fascinating because, your children, right, are, finding those names are, one of the most important steps. But that just shows you how important naming is, whether you're naming your child, whether you're naming your business, whether you're naming your next marketing campaign, in order to be able to get to the good design, to be able to get to the websites and to have customers really come see what you're designing. It starts with what is the name of the place that they're going to find that design. So in 2014, we get to the point where now, again, we want to provide more competition. We want to give consumers more choice in providing good name options that might not be a .com. There are still .coms out there, and .com still sells very well, but it's not just about .com anymore. It's really about how to find good naming options. So I wanted to run a small video. This was put together by ICANN when they started to approve more than 100 new generics that came out.
The Dot is making new friends, more than 1,300 of them, and they're going to change the internet like never before.
The old friends, like org, net, and com, as well as the many 2-letter friends from around the world, will continue to sit by the side of the Dot.
But these new friends promise to show us new things, take us to new places, and open new paths to innovation.
Some are brands, names you already know, who are designing new ways to better serve your online needs.
Some are generics, everyday words that just might attract your personal or professional online interests.
Still others are cities and towns, offering an online home for you or your business.
And for the first time, Dot names in many more languages and characters, giving voice to 1 billion more internet users.
Yes, thanks to the Dot's many new friends, the internet is changing.
So where does that leave us? Today we have more than 314 million domain names on the internet. There are 144 million of those that are specific country code top-level domains, like .in or .co.uk or .co.jp, things of that nature. That's just a little bit less than half of the domain names are other than .com or .net or any of the generics that are registered. Also, within the past 2 years, since a lot of these new generics have been launched, there are, as of the time of VeriSign's domain name brief, which is December 2015, there were a little over 10 million new domain names. So within 2 years, 10 million domain names had been registered within these new extensions. That's about 3.5% of the total domain name market. So it's really showing that people are looking for choice. They are looking for options. And some of those options may be brand protection, but a lot of those options are people looking for good naming, whereas somebody might want example.flowers, somebody else might want example.guru. Those can be 2 different sites with 2 completely different functions, even though they might have the first part of the name, to the left of the dot might be the same.